Hello everyone, welcome to episode 17 of Tracknowledgement, the series where I delve behind the scenes into the kind of sampling production I do here in the studio. And today, as I've been doing recently, I'm going to take a look at the work I did on the most recent sample challenge put forth by the Producers Corner group on Facebook. The challenge this week was odd. It wasn't even it wasn't an album title really or an artist. It was just a prompt to this video on YouTube called Soundtracks Easy Listening Sample Set Mix. And it's kind of weird. It was posted in 2017 by someone named Lou Dav, I don't know. And I assume it's off of vinyl, I don't really know. But it's a mix, it's a compilation really, of a whole bunch of instrumental versions, cover versions of famous movie themes. Ennio Morricone's For a Few Dollars More, Hugo Montenegro's Godfather, which is either wrong one way or wrong the other way. Montenegro didn't do The Godfather. Anyway, who else? Alan Morehouse, Alan Parker, Giorgio Moroder. So they're all rendered in kind of very kitschy, fun elevator music versions, or funk versions, or soul, or jazz, easy listening even. It's really cool, weird stuff. And there's so much stuff on the album, so many different breaks, loops, samples that could be used. And even beats themselves, break beats that are left completely on their own. So, in looking at this treasure trove of possible samples, I challenged myself within this sample challenge to limit myself to using only samples from the sample source. I was not going to add any drum machines, any additional loops or break beats, no other samples, no outside stuff, no scratching. No keyboards, no synthesizers, none of my own drum programming. It was all going to be, everything you hear was going to be from the sample source. And I skipped a couple of them. I skipped the Ennio Morricone, A Few Dollars More, because that's just so familiar. And also on here, about 3/4 of the way through, there's this, which, has been used a couple of times. I think probably most famously, perhaps even first, by DJ Shadow. So, didn't use that. But, yeah, I went through and picked out a lot of other things. I ended up using at least 20, definitely, over 20 different samples, loops, snippets, whatever, from that original sample source. And I'm going to go and show you what some of them are. Started off with this. Which is actually just kind of a chunk, a little looped chunk of a longer sample, which is this. So that was the first thing that really jumped out at me, sample me. And that's panned over to the left because that section on the album that has that song, it does that loop at the beginning of that song and then again at the end of that song. And I took the beginning part and panned it to the left, took the end part and panned it to the right. And all through this I had to do a lot of quantizing and pitch shifting to keep things on tempo. And I put these two together and they sound like this. They're remarkably tight, you can barely even tell that it's not just one sample. But they work really well together. It gives it a nice stereo feel to it. Okay, and then over that, I did this. So it's up with just the hi-hats and then this. So that combined with the original. See how those go together. Yeah, I had to do a lot of pitch shifting on that. Over that comes this. Completely different part of the album. And that combines with this. And the original loop. So you can see how much is really combined there. Even right there, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 things going, 4 different things. Over that, after that first 4, and I wanted to change, I brought in this vocal, this singing bit. With some reverb on it. And after I'd done mine, I went and checked out a lot of other people's sample work on this challenge. Really cool stuff this week, you know, a lot of stuff to pick from. And a few people had picked out that vocal bit. It didn't work completely for me because the second half of that kind of descending vocal line, it went out of key, and even with my software I couldn't really nudge it into place. It just sounded awful. So I ended up editing around it. But you hear how it sounds combined with everything that I've already shown you. So that was a nice change. Over that I have these little bits of flute that come in. And especially over the singing part, I have this. Which helps resolve the problem I have with the notes on the singing. Kind of resolves it to the note I wanted. So that comes in at that point. Another loop comes in right where the vocals come in, right where that singing part comes in. This, yeah. So this is just a beat that was on the album, and I wanted just the percussive parts, just the hi-hats and the ride cymbal there. So I filtered everything, I filtered that part out, so all you hear were the highs. Okay. Excuse me. Then, what else do I have? Singing. Okay, yeah. Then all that kind of builds, and I wanted a kind of part where it slows down for a second, kind of pauses, and then I was able to kick back in with more stuff. So I did this to the original samples. Went halftime, then back in. And at that point, when that went halftime, I also I faded this part. Faded that out, and then when that comes back in, it comes back in with vibraphones. And then this here, electric piano, flute, keeps going. This is, so that's all on the same track. I was just chopping different parts of one big sample. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot more than 20 samples on Often, you know, 5, 6, 7 going all at once. That part goes and has these flutes. And it didn't really do that in that order on the album. I had to chop up these little sections of 4 and rearrange them. Anyway, so I'm getting a little ahead of that. When I had that little kind of pause when things went halftime and then came back in, this comes in at that point. Pitch shifted to hell, really. Also at that part, this comes in. The breakbeat on the album, kind of edited. I didn't even add that phaser sound to it, that's on the album. This comes in at that point. Kind of like the one big breakbeat from the album. That combined with the other one. And this. And this. Okay, so at that point, after the beat comes in, I have a little pause. And at that pause, I brought this in. So you can see how that comes in. And what's funny is that there's so many loops on here that could have very well been broken out into their own, 2-minute, their own sections. I would have spotlighted. If I had done a beat that was longer than 2 minutes, I would have had sections on here spotlighting these different loops. And, this is one of them. It's a really cool loop. But as it was, the only space I had for it was, let me show you, hang on, gotta mute this thing, was this part here. I mean, you don't even hear that in the final mix at all. It's just there in that break. And the main reason you don't hear that in that is because 2 other things go over that. Again, if I had more time, if I made this beat longer, I would spotlight these things in different places. But as it was with only 2 minutes, it was all about editing and pitch shifting and quantizing everything on beat. And then it was a matter of arrangement. It was just deciding what goes where. And I wanted to arrange it just kind of as a song, beginning, middle, and end. So some stuff couldn't be spotlighted. There just wasn't time for it. But that little thing, dum 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 dum, that gets buried by this other thing from a completely different part of the album. And again, that's that kind of like, A-Team theme song thing, whatever. That could have been broken out into its own loop, all on its own. And that's the only place it goes in here, is that break, which you can hear. And then, yeah, when it comes back in, I add these. Sorry. Add this here. Another one here. And then at the end of the loop is this. From a, far more disco-y part of the album, really. And that goes like this. Another one here. So, yeah, I mean, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things going at once, and those horn stabs. You know, that's what's going on there. Here I wanted to kind of break down, build up into the next section, so I did this to that original loop that I played you. Little easy kind of trill thing coming out of that. And yeah, that's where that flute goes, that high flute. The flute and the build-up, dun dun dun, that repetitive thing, it coincides with this to give you this kind of spotlight, re-intro, kicking down the door moment. Okay, yeah, when that comes in, a couple of brand new things come in from different sections of the sample source. This here, another beat. The beat with a bass line. Oh, with a bass note, really. And then more interestingly is this. Saxophone. Which actually on that track, a little bit of the saxophone had appeared earlier in the song, right here. Similar to those little bits of flute, like this. There are little bits of flute and there are little bits of saxophone that kind of come in and out. What are you? I don't even know what some of this is. Oh yeah, sorry. So those are that's the little disco stab. Saxophone, breakdown, kind of pause. At the end it goes, the original loop comes back in. But over that, brand new section from that album. Which I have one track where it's filtered just the bass, and one where it's filtered just kind of the guitar. It's the same loop, I just duplicated it and filtered the bass because I wasn't getting the correct rumble on the bass with just the sample on its own. And that runs to the end, and it ends like this. And right at the end you hear, so after I was all done kind of assembling all those musical loops that you hear there, one of the last things I found was this odd kind of crackly, crunchy loop here. Just like, I don't know, electric piano, and then it's got this kind of like clap, kind of like a Bismarcky kind of clap. And that, I'll show you how it goes with a beat. If I find a section here, yeah, okay, so with this beat. And that's a loop, man, you know, that's one of the last things I found, but I can make a loop, you know, a beat just with that. It has a really cool, weird, offbeat, stumbly kind of thing. As it is, I settled for having that be in the background, coming in and out a lot during the song. You hear it even from the very beginning. In the background. Then it gets louder here. And at the very end of the song, I edited the final note of that, kind of extended it as a last note of the song. And that's how that ended. So I think I got everything. I think I showed you everything. It's a lot going on, but the idea was to just arrange these samples, not just layer them and everything, but place them properly to approximate just a brand new piece of music, a collage out of all of the sample sources. And the philosophy I have with sampling is the word kind of came up while I was working on this. I was thinking the word invisibility. I was going to call it invisibility. The idea being, my style of sampling is often not, I'm not really showing off the sample. I'm not showing off that it is a sample. There's ways to do that. There's ways, I mean, hell, going back when I first started sampling, 87 or whatever. Yeah, you go dum dum dum, you repeat a sample, you'd edit it, you chop it up, these days, a lot of chopping, a lot of flipping. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just, there's no wrong or right about it. They are different styles, and I do that sometimes. I do this most of the time. But yeah, overall, my style using samples is I assemble everything where it just sounds really smooth, really cohesive. It just sounds like a song, like an instrumental. And, people could be forgiven for, picking up a Type 4 song, hearing the instrumental, and assuming, oh, Matt just found a sample that does that, does all that. Which is great. It's actually a wonderful compliment, if someone doesn't even notice what I was doing. They just accept it as, oh, a band was doing that, or he found some lost Funkadelic song that was doing all that. I compare it to that invisibility. I compare it to what people that work in the film industry doing computer graphic effects, visual effects, they talk about, I think it was, I don't know, Ken Ralston, who was it that, Douglas Trumbull, I think it was Trumbull, talked about how the best special effects are the ones that you don't notice. If they have done their work properly, then they have simulated a reality so convincing that your mind just accepts it, and you don't pick it apart and say, oh, cool effect. They don't want to hear someone say, oh, that was cool effect. That's noticing that it's fake, A good example is the work on Forrest Gump. There's a lot of computer graphic effects, and a lot of them are kind of flashy, in your face. It's one thing to, make a big deal, make a big show out of removing Lieutenant Dan's legs, Gary Sinise's legs, and on the making of, you see, not only did they, chop off his legs and have him wear these green boots and everything, but just to show off, they had him rotate his legs through a space where there was a bar or something, and his legs couldn't have possibly gone through. So they had to, that bar is also CGI and all that. Now you can kind of figure that out, and you'll say, oh, cool effect, because of course Gary Sinise has legs. What you don't notice is behind that scene, they've done all this digital replacement of the skies, enhancing all the sunsets and the colors and everything. None of the skies look like that. They talk about it on the making of the commentary or whatever. And that's the kind of special effects that you don't notice, you just accept as reality. Oh, they must have found days that look like that. No, they didn't. They made it look like that. So, oh, Matt must have found a big piece of music that did all this. No, I arranged it. I put it all together. But that invisibility of not getting in the way of it, letting it do its thing, stepping back. Film directors talk about that too, you know. I think I mentioned it before in another one, the idea that there are film directors like, you know, Scorsese with his zooms or whatever, or you know, Wes Anderson with his kind of proscenium postcards, you know, setting up everything in a perfect position, and you can tell, you can look at it and be like, oh, that's a director at work. Or you have someone like, I don't know, Clint Eastwood or Woody Allen or something that doesn't have a style. He doesn't get in the way of it. He just wants to record it. He wants to put the camera in the right place, get the right actors, have them do their thing, and your brain just kind of accepts it as reality. There isn't that wonderful artifice of, you know, Wes Anderson or Aronofsky or something. There's just, oh, someone turned a camera on real people. You know, whether it's Mike Nichols or, you know, other directors. So, in calling it Invisibility, the last thing that occurred to me, and the only outside sample I used on this, the only sample I used that wasn't from the sample source, I went and I couldn't resist it, I went and grabbed a couple of lines from Claude Rains in the original Invisible Man film. Claude Rains was the Invisible Man. Goes the lyric.
For it, the country bumpkins.
Put a diffused echo on it.
This will give them a bit of a shock.
Anyway, so that's at the beginning, and then at that part where this goes. I mean, you barely even hear that in the final mix because I obscured it. I put this over it, the Claude Rains thing.
It's easy, really, if you're clever.
And then towards the end, I have him laughing maniacally, which is what a lot of the villains did in the old Universal Monsters. You know, like Renfield with his like hey 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 kind of thing. And this is Claude Rains. Freaking out the locals. But yeah, that's Frenchie from Casablanca. Probably having more fun even in this role. And then
Are you satisfied now, you fools?
that's the way it ends, is him, you know, are you satisfied now, you fools? And that's it. It was all just a matter of finding where everything was supposed to go. Pitch shifting a lot to get it on key. And it went, you know, fairly quickly. Started working it on Monday, and I think I finished it Tuesday morning. You know. And that's that. That's my my Invisibility Sample Challenge 116. And a bit of my philosophy regarding invisibility with sampling and all that. So, anyway, I'll catch you all at the live YouTube Sample Challenge show, and I will be back probably next week, week after, or whatever, to talk about my next Sample Challenge making of behind the scenes. Thanks for watching. Take care. Have a good week.